music, there we go. Music, I do most of my recording just through this. Like I'll sit down with the guitar, just play next to the iPad. The microphones on them are good enough to pick up relatively professional sound, and you spruce it up, you know, EQ it or whatever. But yeah,
right. Oh, very cool, man.
I guess since I am recording to cloud, I will ask you to make a backup this time around.
Yeah, you got it. Absolutely.
I've never lost an episode because of that, but I have lost video, which isn't like a big deal. But
oh yeah.
And actually, if you would like to do the prologue, I guess I'll have to ask you to bring that up. It's in the notes I sent you. So.
Sure. Yeah. Here, let me hit record. Oh, you have to give me permission to record.
Oh, if I can, I'll just hope it works, because I this always happens like when I'm like in the middle of it, right? So security lock meeting, chat with, share screen, unmute, remove. I don't want to do that. Do you happen to know where you do this? It's apparently not security.
No, it should be in the meeting itself. I think you can tap on my, like there's a little toggle or a little drop down menu on my video that says allow to record video.
I need to switch to gallery view for that.
Yeah.
Switch camera, switch to active speaker.
I don't think I can request it from you. I think
background effects. Chat. No, I'm assume that hopefully it works out okay then.
Well, I can record. I can do local.
Oh wait, here we go.
Oh, you got it?
Allow to record local files. Does this do it?
Yeah. Cool. And done. We are recording.
Okay, great. So this is what I do on a backup, because I'm on iPad, and I haven't done this kind of podcasting for a long time, where I have to do it like with one headphone on, one headphone off, so I can also hear myself.
Oh man.
Actually, before we get rolling, do you have any good Thunderbirds or UFO questions? Because I'll be doing a podcast on that Monday, and I don't actually know those things that well.
Not really. I mean, it's been a while since I've kind of, caught up or watched much of those shows. I think they're cool. I think they're a great kind of relic of their time. I always thought about it as like, the ultimate fantasy of you're a kid, you have toys, you have models, action figures, stuff, and this is all that stuff come to life. This is the adults playing with your action figures and models. But
yeah, my jam's always been Space 1999, but
yeah. Oh God, this is such a good looking show, man. In all its weirdness, it's just so cool.
But yeah, apparently there's a new book on the UFO, like behind the scenes of UFO, which is coming out in November. So they're making the rounds to, I guess, promote that. So I was like, okay, let's do Thunderbirds or go.
Yeah, cool. Let me very quickly here turn off any noisemakers. Man, I'm glad that Norm silenced Julie. And it's getting a little out of hand. She, she has a tendency to show up drunk sometimes, so that's not cool. Yeah,
no, I've had a tendency to do that a few places. I think I'm usually I think I'm considered a pleasant one though.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, even when Julie is not drunk, she can sometimes not be pleasant. So
that's in Japan, like, people, I mean, there are people that are definitely not pleasant, but they usually still have this weird like social veneer, and you have to like learn that they're not pleasant, which I don't know, sometimes a little, sometimes it's nice when people are just like, here I am, this is what I do, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's no sort of no mask of any sort. I guess, I was sitting there listening to it basically as radio while making the trivia for this. So
yeah, cool.
Little slack, get up, do the get the breakfast, do the dishes, all that. And I was like, 8:30 is when I usually start podcasting. So okay, I'll multitask.
Yeah, very cool. Great. Well, yeah, I have your notes up here. I have the monologue. So yeah.
Okay, if you got it, let's roll. I'll give it about 5 seconds to spot, and we'll be in.
Do you want me to just start with that, or do you want me to wait for you to cue me on that?
Oh, I'll just stay shut up for about 3 seconds or so. I literally just look at the sound file. I'm like, okay, there's where it starts.
Yeah.
Oh, Zoom on my computer is just now opening. That's funny. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's the podcast where we talk about episodes of the Twilight Zone and beyond. Eventually, people keep asking why you say that, and it's like, well, there's a lot of Twilight Zone first, okay? So that's where we are for now. But this is Matt here, joining again as a pretty much a regular is John Champion from the Mission Log podcast, where he talks all Trek all the time, plus some food.
Yeah, it was about half Trek, half food, and you beat us to it because at one point years and years ago, we were making a list of shows that could stand up to the Mission Log treatment, and Twilight Zone was always one of them. But we just never got around to doing it, and now this has become Mission Log adjunct.
No. I don't mind. Yeah, I think my goal in the first place was to sort of make my little own off-brand version. So you folks want to come in and chat,
good.
Even better.
Yeah, no, it's very good. It's a lot of fun, and it's cool to, see a lot of the people that I work with come on your show. This is great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're here about as often as my childhood friends now. So
nice, fair enough.
But yeah, today we're looking at the episode Dust, which is on film. I thought we were about to hit another videotape one, and I was like luxuriating in the film quality watching this one. Maybe it's static, which is videotaped coming up later. But yeah, real nice looking episode. I think it was my first time seeing this one.
I don't know if this was my first time seeing this one, but it was my first time really engaging with the material. Like I've sort of vaguely remembered it, and maybe as a kid I wasn't paying that much attention to it. This time, just it was a lot more emotionally resonant and really stuck with me. And stylistically, being back on film looked great, and just sort of enjoying that beautiful, I presume, MGM Old West set. It's gorgeous.
Every time I see beautiful. This, though, I always in the back of my mind, I'm like, is that the Spawn Ranch?
Yeah, right. No, I think this is over at 40 Acres at MGM in Culver City. And it would be cool. I'm sure that somebody has already done the legwork on it, but to see where these buildings and where these interiors were used on other shows. Like I'm sure that they're in, Blazing Saddles or any number of contemporary, 50s, 60s, 70s before they tore down that lot. I'm sure that they show up in a lot of those places and reconfigured too.
Actually, I ran across like the real thing once, like the real ghost town, which was a couple of times actually. As a Boy Scout, we were hiking in New Mexico, and there was just like, this is like miles and miles from even a road, and the guide was like, I'm gonna take you to a ghost town, and it was like legit, like nobody there, no roads anywhere near.
That's so cool.
The other really off the track place I've been is have you been to Darwin, California?
No, don't know anything about it.
It's in the Owens Valley, and it takes a bit of a drive, and I think about 50 people live there, and it's kind of like a lot of people are using solar power, that sort of thing. I think they have some kind of dome, and you drive a little bit from that, and there's like this abandoned mine that literally looks like people walked away from in like 1888, and it's just sitting there, which at the time, being about 24 years old, went exploring a bit. So, I could have fallen down a shaft and ended up in my own Twilight Zone.
See, I feel like there's very little in the accessible world that can get discovered anymore because, we all have GPS, everybody's on the internet. Once something gets discovered, everybody is there. So like the idea of just stumbling across a ghost town is a pretty remote possibility at this point. The one that I have been to is the exact opposite of that, which is Calico Ghost Town, midway between LA and Vegas. And it was indeed, a booming town sometime in the 1880s or 1890s. And then when everything left and when everything shut down, let's just say it was, the 20s or whatever, it sat there empty for years and years. And then who bought it? Walter Knott of Knott's Berry Farm. So now when you go, this is probably in the 50s or 60s that he bought it. So now when you go as a tourist in the 21st century, what you see is paved roads, and you see the animatronics that were left over from the 60s in this authentic 19th century ghost town. So it's like a whole other level. So I'm going to a ghost town, but what I'm actually seeing is the overlay of a theme park attraction, but that is also dilapidated. Like, it's a weird combination. It's cool, but it's not what I expected.
But I like that's, 2 layers of creepy, I guess, to take us to our town in dust, which still has some people in it, downtrodden people, of course. But I'll get a little bit of the trivia out of the way, that we are now in 1961. This has an air date of January 6th. Of course, I'm still sure they filmed it in 1960, but yeah, we've gotten to the new year. The episode is a Serling script. Sykes is played by Thomas Gomez. We saw him before in Escape Clause, but just to mention it again, he was the first Spanish American to gain an Academy Award nomination for the movie Ride the Pink Horse, and his final role was as the minister in Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which we recently visited.
Yeah, of course.
Vladimir Sokolov was Papa Gallegos, two L's make a Y, and but he from his name you can tell he's not Spanish.
You're kidding.
That said, he began his film career in Germany, but escaped due to the rise of Nazism and the fact that he was Jewish. He quickly reestablished himself in Hollywood, and his quote exotic features allowed him to play what he guessed was about 35 different nationalities.
Wow.
While he has many credits, as a studio player does at that time, the 1938 film, The Amazing Dr. Clitterhouse, stuck out just because of the title.
And now I have to see it.
Yeah, he'll be back in the zone 2 more times. We saw John Larch in the episode Perchance to Dream, and we'll see him again in the iconic It's a Good Life. While I will not take the time to dive deep into his credits again, I will reiterate that he was Dirty Harry's police chief. Seemingly doomed Luis was played by, I can't even roll my R's, by the way. Seemingly doomed Luis was played by John Alonzo. While he has a few other acting credits, his true calling was in cinematography, where he lensed classics such as Chinatown and Scarface. I don't want to miss my Trek nod this time around, so I'll make sure to mention that he also did the cinematography for Star Trek Generations.
Oh, right on. Yeah, which, by the way, I think, other than the motion picture, is one of the best shot of all the Star Trek feature films. Like, that has a really painterly quality to it. And even though it's not the best movie, there's some stunning camera work done in that.
You are right, but I can hold back and not say it, or I could totally ruin that for you with what my father said when we came out of the sneak preview of Generations.
Ooh, yeah. What did he say?
I felt like the ship was in urine vision.
Okay, so there were a lot of they tended to lean toward warm tones.
Yeah,
that all right.
That was his hot take when he came out. He likes the movie fine. He was just like,
yeah.
And again, it's like we had a month earlier seen the TV lighting, so it was quite jarring.
Exactly.
At the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is good cinematography for sure. I just every time I see that movie, that statement's in the back of my mind, right?
Yeah.
With that, I thought about, there wasn't too much on the bereaved couple, so I didn't really bother putting some trivia on them, but I almost did. Let's put it that way. But Wiki was like, there's not much on them. But if I could have you go ahead and give us a prologue.
You got it. There was a village built of crumbling clay and rotting wood, and it squatted ugly under a broiling sun like a sick and mangy animal waiting to die. This village had a virus, shared by its people. It was the germ of squalor, of hopelessness, of a loss of faith. For the faithless, the hopeless, the misery-laden. There is time, ample time, to engage in one of the other pursuits of men. They began to destroy themselves.
Not the first time we've begun to destroy ourselves in a Twilight Zone episode, I
Mm-hmm.
suppose.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I kind of noticed this with the Serling intro this time around, because of course season 2 is when he starts showing up on screen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm noticing the times that he seems to be on set and not on set.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I just like this one seemed like very green screen, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the best one I've seen though, I think it was actually the preview and not the episode itself, but a nervous man in a $4 room where it has him giving the preview and you're like looking down on the room behind him and it's like super disorienting. So
oh yeah, yeah.
I kind of wish they do a little bit more of that.
Yeah, that would be cool actually. Yeah.
I don't know, where do you want to start on this one, light or deep?
Man, I feel like we're gonna have to end deep because this is just a deep episode. But I'll also make the case that it is it's one of those times in the Twilight Zone where I feel like the Twilight Zone often gets the unfair criticism that it's so dark and bleak and it's just sort of, fate biting you in the ass, which it does a lot of that, and I think in a very good way. But this, if you look at it, I mean, this has this hopeful message in it. This has like, it's not too late. Not you can actually make a difference. So we'll land there. But I think we can. I think we can do the fun stuff up top. And if by fun, one of the things we already covered, just saying like, technically this is shot great, it looks great, and it's also like this old west town that in a very 1950s 1960s TV way is populated by these very like two-dimensional characters. But here's the thing, like it's a real trick if you can do that and still care about those characters and still care about the story that they're. I'm not going to say that they're all two-dimensional because you do feel sympathy and empathy for them, but like, it's the sheriff who's just been kind of beat up a little too much, who's had enough, he's tired of it. The the con man, the snake oil salesman who is all show, and the bereaved family of the little girl. Like it's all just very clear cut. It's characters by the numbers, but immediately you just have this sense of place. You have this sense of what happened. The exposition is great. It just lays everything out for you right there, as much as you need to understand, and then lets the story unfold in this kind of natural way. So I can't find fault with any of the setup at all.
Yeah, like I think it's that maybe the characters are relatively two-dimensional, but every actor in this is like chewing the scenery.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
That's basically why I was like, gee, I should have like maybe I should have written some trivia about the bereaved couple, because they're only on screen for what, a minute total, but they make their minute count.
Sure. Well, and I love like how everybody, they're sweaty, they're a little dirty, and that first shot of the town, of the street, and the tumbleweed are blowing through. Like, yeah, again, it's one of these very obvious cliche things, but it so drives home the narration that Serling gives and sets up this moral rot, this personal rot that is exemplified by the town that they're in. Like everything fits together. Like you just feel like this is one of those episodes where everything is super intentional.
Yeah, I guess that's, none of us really can get in that frontier frame of mind where you're kind of living without, a net, a safety net. I mean, people can end up in terrible situations in their life and be there, which, I think both of us are fortunate to not.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, like you mentioned, everything seems a little dirty, grimy. When Psych shows up, my note there is that, I feel like he probably smells like an unfortunate combination of patchouli, vomit, and New York subway. So
yeah, I think you're 100% right. Yep.
I don't know why people think patchouli smells good, but I also hate the smell of freshly cut grass. So, who knows? I do find it that someone calls Sykes like a little person. That was kind of weird.
Oh
He's pretty
yeah.
big,
Yeah, yeah,
little
he
man, something
is.
like that.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
was one of those ironic nicknames, right?
yeah, like tiny, I guess that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Um, put some other quotes here. Oh, for the album title, mentioning "Tears
Mhm.
Enough for Both." I was like, that seems perfect for a Latter Day Cure album. Uh,
Yeah. Good call. Good call.
but yeah, I guess I just I'm talking about him because he, of the scenery chewing characters, he is the one that like sticks with you the most, I think, because you're like, oh, he like stole the show, and you watch again. No, everyone's doing their part pretty well, but you know, you
Yeah.
definitely have his smiling face with a few teeth missing as your take home image from this episode, at least in my case.
Yeah. Yeah. For real. Yeah.
You got any other hot takes for this?
Not really, man. It's tough to have hot takes on, on this episode because I don't know, because it keeps surprising you. Like every time, the first time around that I watched it, and this one deserves multiple viewings because I think the first time around I just felt like, okay, this is very stylistic. You know, again, the characters are a bit two-dimensional, and like how much of this over the top con man am I going to be able to take? How much of the the bereaved town folk am I going to be able to take? But then once you go through that journey, once you come back and watch it again, you go like, oh, okay, but in this context, these are all correct. These are all the right characters that I need to drive home the message of this story. You know, even like the silliness at the end of old man Gallegos, you know, desperately throwing the dust into the air and crying, it's love, it's the the magic, this is magic, this is love. Like it's so ludicrous on the first watch, but it's not ludicrous anymore after you've been through the story and when you watch it again.
Right, it worked.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I also felt like just the very idea of what we're dealing with here. Okay, there are plenty of episodes of Twilight Zone where people meet an unfortunate end, but most of the time those ends are either poetic, like 16 millimeter shrine. Okay, is she dead? Is she not? Does she exist in this other plane? Whatever, wherever she is, it's captured on film in the best parts of her life. So fine, you know. Or you have like the one armed bandit. I'm forgetting the name of the
The
episode.
fugitive? Oh, I was sorry, we're Twilight Zone.
No. The slot machine that kills the gambler. You know,
Yeah, that's
and
the fever.
yeah, right. And it's like, and it's silly and it's ridiculous, but it's also this hallucinatory nightmare, and you feel like, well, that guy met the end that is probably right for him, you know? But an episode like this, how many times have we dealt with in any TV in 1960s, 61, the death of a little girl from a drunk driver? You know, that's what we're talking about here. That this is the central driving story element for this. This is dark stuff. And to add that extra layer, yes, Twilight Zone has dealt with execution before, with capital punishment before, but this is just like, this isn't just some, even though we get to a weird twist of fate at the end, this is an episode that forces you to contemplate capital punishment from beginning to end. Like that, that is the whole purpose of this episode. There are other episodes where people die. There are other episodes where somebody is going to get hung, Owl Creek or whatever that one is,
Well, later this season we got Shadow Play, which certainly has a thing or two to say about that.
Yeah, there you go. But there's often like a supernatural element that allows you to sort of weave in and out of that. This is like, no. We're just dealing with every single person dealing with this execution. And it's intense. It's heavy stuff.
Well, I actually, before we get too heavy, I do want to maybe define magic a little bit and what we're seeing in this episode. So there's David Copperfield. I'm on stage and doing stuff. Well, he's a little farther past that, but
Yeah, yeah,
there's stage magic, right?
yeah,
Then there's like the Harry Potter magic, which is kind of in everyone's mind, and
yeah.
the one that I think that people that the more mystical folks would say, okay, the universe is quantum, everything is probabilities, so
Hmm.
magic is just a way to nudge those probabilities a little bit, hopefully in our
Hmm.
favor. I mean,
Hmm.
that's you take it too far, you end up trying to do astrology, right? But
Yeah, right,
but that's
right.
what I'm saying here. Like in a way, the dust is magic because of the intention he's putting into it. Like the old man is, firmly convinced that of what
Yeah,
he's doing. So his actions, and it's not the dust, is it? It's just his actions are pushing probabilities in a certain direction.
yeah,
But that's the string, the rope breaking, the brand new hemp rope that breaks 5 strands, that breaks.
yeah.
That's the conundrum of this episode. Like, is that just a wild coincidence? Is it
Well,
magic? Does his intention somehow kind of, like make
yeah.
it more likely that would happen at that point?
Well, what's important is that he's putting that intention into all the people who are gathered there, to all the people who are gathered there in this ghoulish thing that we used to do not that long ago in our collective history, which is get together and watch somebody die. You know, like this is, from our point of view now, this is a grim display of the worst of humanity that we would get together to do that. Now, you could make an argument now that we do a similar thing by, watching videos of people get hurt and all the like that impulse is still there to see something that is disturbing and is dangerous. Um, but at the time, public executions were common, they were expected, and they were part of the experience for the town folk in a place like that. That was just expected. That was just part of a thing that you did. And for him to be able to change the minds of people long enough to want a different outcome instead of the thing that they gathered there for, which is, oh, well, justice is served as long as we're there watching this person die, which is its own twisted thing, you know? But as long as he's able to change their minds long enough that they want a different outcome, to get back to what you're getting at here, what happens? Are they pushing the universe? Are they pushing that probability, nudging it just enough in the right direction that the rope breaks? I mean, look, I'm as much of a sort of, naturalistic non-believer, skeptic, whatever. Like, I don't need Sykes at the end saying like, but it was 5 strands of brand new hemp rope and it broke, like telegraphing that back to the audience. I don't necessarily need that, because all I need to know is that it broke. All I need to know is that young Gallegos is okay. And the important part about it is not how it broke, not that it did break. It's that for a moment, the people in this town got to stop and reflect on themselves. They got to reflect on their own bad behavior. And that to me is the magic of the episode, you know?
Just to touch the gallows humor, I did
Mhm.
end up thinking if that one father was somewhat, disappointed. He took his kids to see a hanging and nobody got hanged. It's like
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. But but then you have to have a conversation about it and the reality of this town. Then you have to have a conversation about that afterward. Like, is it a good thing that we were there to watch somebody die? How do we feel about it now that he didn't? How do we feel about it now that we saw the look of relief on his face and on his father's face and on his sister's face? Like, how then do we process all of that? Because now these are still living people that we have to interact with.
and are they going to have a hanging next week? I mean, it's like a weekly event at the frontier town, maybe. I don't know that, but
Yeah, I mean, see, that's the other interesting question here. Like, I don't know what the statistics are. I don't know what the laws were like in 1960, but I have to assume that at the time that this was written, capital punishment was, if not more common, at least more legal than it is now. Like the number of states that have outlawed capital punishment between 1960 and 2022, probably pretty high. The number of countries that have outlawed capital punishment since 1960, probably not an insignificant number.
No, of the first world nations, the only countries that even have capital punishments, the one I'm sitting in and the one you're sitting in.
Yeah,
That's
right,
it at this
right.
point.
Yeah. And here in the US, I mean, like even in California where I am, like that has gone back and forth a few times in the last 100 years. Right now, capital punishment still outlawed, but famously, that's like why Charles Manson did not get the death penalty, because it was right on the edge of the time where it was legal, but then it stopped being legal, then it went back for a while, and it's all this strange stuff. And I have to imagine that here's Rod Serling talking to an audience in 1960, 61, saying, by the way, have you really given thought to what it is that we're doing as an audience, as a societal audience, when we allow people to get put to death? Like, what happens if you just take a step back from that for a minute and decide to exercise some mercy, or decide to put yourself into the shoes of the family of the person who is being executed? Whatever, I don't think he's saying that people shouldn't pay for their crimes, but I think he's showing a real distinction here between, okay, can we make a judgment call about what is an accident, what is something that merits the highest level of punishment that we have, versus what we do when we show a little mercy to someone. It's super profound. And I don't want to be preachy on your podcast, but it's the emotional, compassionate part of this, I think, is what's so important, that is sometimes for better or for worse, either becomes a component or stops being a component in how we set laws and how we administer those laws to people.
Obviously, we have some more discussion to do, but I'm actually going to start asking my normal questions, because I think that second one's going to lead to a lot of that discussion this time around. So
yeah.
Let's go ahead and define who went into the Twilight Zone in this episode.
So what's interesting is I think you could make that argument for a few different people, actually several different people. I think one, you can say that Sykes went through the Twilight Zone because his reality was changed by selling this thing that he thought was just a bag of dust, but then a miracle happened. And what happened to him afterward? He gives the money to the kids. His reality is now shaken, so he's like, I can't take this money
it's like
that I got.
Opposite of blood money, I guess. It's like you meant for it to be blood money, and now it's not.
Yeah. So I think he did. I think Luis Gallegos did. He was saved by a miracle of some sort, however we want to define that miracle, but he gets to step out of it and live his life now. Old Man Gallegos went through the Twilight Zone in the respect that he put his faith into something, whether he believed it or not, and we're led to believe that he thinks that what he's doing is legit. He believes in the magic of the bag. Somehow that magic actually worked for him in this case. And that, I would say, most importantly, is everybody in that town who's assembled to watch an execution. They went through the Twilight Zone.
That's what I was going to get to. I was going to say the whole town, except for my sarcastic exception, that guy that just wanted to take his kids to see it hanging.
Right. But again, but those people, their reality changed him too. Their reality changed at that point when the rope broke, and broke just as the father is pleading for love. They've got to go back home and sort this out. They've got to talk about this, so
have quite a discussion at home.
For everybody there watching, their reality changed. So they all went through it too.
So that does bring us to the second one, which I think is going to break out in a little more of an answer than usual, which is, in fact, I'm going to rephrase it. Who deserves what in this episode?
Oh man.
We can take it one by one. Let's go ahead and start with, I guess, Luis is the most obvious. does,
Yeah.
because he gets redemption, which, and I think both you and I are on the page are like, nobody deserves to capital punishment. Nobody deserves to die. But what does he deserve? I mean,
Yeah, that's a good question. Like nobody knows what to do with him at the end, and so the sheriff just says you can go home. And it was interesting because if I'm not mistaken, Gallegos asks, "Am I free?" And the sheriff, he doesn't really respond to that, but he says you can go home. So there's sort of a
doesn't he
question
say
of
as free as any of us?
did he say that? Did he?
I think
Okay.
I
Maybe, yeah,
think there
maybe
was a
I'm
line
forgetting
like
that.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But to me it was there's a bit of ambivalence there because it's like, okay, he escaped execution, but does he really escape justice in the respect that he still did this thing? Yeah, it was an accident, a horrible accident, but a little girl died. And somehow we have to make up for this. Somehow Gallegos has to be punished. He has to serve, although you could argue that the punishment of thinking that you're about to be hung and going through that process is torture. That just the process of what he's gone through is kind of torture. How much more can you lay on him at that point? I don't know.
Something that's very different between 1961 and now, and
Mhm.
2022 as we're recording, is let's think of North by Northwest with
Mhm.
Cary Grant. He's had a bottle of bourbon, poured into him, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
it's like
right.
a joke at the police station. So it's like, I'm like, in
Yeah.
1961, is the fact that he was actually drunk driving like not, because now it just seems like, yeah, he like, Luis really does suck, even if he comes across as a nice guy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think we're a little more judgmental towards him now than people might have been in 1961.
Yeah. But I mean, the question is still like, okay, you can't replace a life. They can't replace this little girl who died. Um, at the same time, the important thing here is that that little girl's family realizes that they don't want to see another death, that another death will not atone for the loss of their child. And that's what's really critical about the message of this episode, is telling an audience in 1961, by the way, if you think that justice is being served just because somebody else died, that is not the case at all. Now you've got, two dead bodies instead of the one. So we've got to figure out a better way to frame like how we deal with these crimes, how we punish the people who are guilty of them. But are we doing that correctly, or are we doing that humanely if we just decide, well, best thing to do is string them up in the town square? Like, no, that clearly is not the answer. So does Luis get off a little too easy? I that's hard to say, like it's hard to imagine that he's going to be able to sleep that night or the next night or the
Yeah.
night after that, you
or
know?
or or the 90 films, Star Trek Generations.
Yeah, see?
35
Exactly.
years later, or no, 33
Exactly.
if we're doing math correctly. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. um so I don't know what his fate is. I don't know if he gets what he deserves or not enough of what he deserves. But I would say that he was tortured by going through what he went through in the episode, and he will continue to be tortured by it. Even
Okay.
if there's the relief that he got a second chance.
Yeah, let's take it to Pops then, who
Mhm.
but in my note is Daddy's argument for justifying drunken vehicular homicide holds no water. Is this
Mm.
why this episode's dust?
Mm.
but but when he's making the arguments, like, again, it's like, no, I'm not for capital punishment, but your argument doesn't. It's all emotion. It's not logic, and you're kind of just
Yeah.
like glossing over like the horrible thing that's happened. Like Daddy's argument mostly is nonsensical.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's not an argument that would hold up in a court of law, obviously. But I think what's important is that we, as the audience, immediately clue into the idea that Luis isn't just some lone guy who constantly makes bad decisions. He's somebody who has a family, who has people who care about him, and then we should also be in the shoes of the people who care about him. We can also be in the shoes of the family who are mourning over the loss of their little girl. But we have to humanely be in the shoes of everybody who's involved. So if he serves that purpose, then maybe that's dramatically that's the right thing to do. Legally, not so much.
So I might put Daddy in the shoes of kind of like naive idealism, basically. Like you can't dislike him.
Yeah.
He's seems like a pure sort of guy. I mean, who knows? But in this episode, he seems like a relatively pure sort of guy. Now, the parents of the child, who are way too old to be parents of a child, by the way. I looked up the actress was Dorothy something, but yeah, she was 60 years old when they filmed this. I'm like, no, she didn't have a little girl, but
wow.
But they did make the decision. Here we go. Dorothy Adams was about 60 filming this, so since I didn't get her in the trivia, but the Canfields, they're the ones that make that decision not to kill today. They were complicit with it before, but then they make the decision. They are given that decision. They make the decision. Nobody dies today, which I guess that's an important frontier decision to make.
Right.
That's why I'm like, are we having another hanging next week, or is this town like kind of has their mind shifted?
Well, I mean that's what I hope. What happens in the reality of the show is that this is that little spark where people get to be reflective enough and think, oh, wait a minute, maybe all this capital punishment, maybe the spectacle that we make out of execution isn't actually such a good thing. Maybe we actually have to think that there are other people, or there are real people on the other side of the equation here. To the audience in 1960-61, again, it's forcing them to reconcile with the idea that, well, capital punishment is still a pretty common thing. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with the idea that we have just decided that we're going to leave the fates of human beings up to 12 people and a judge who get to decide who lives and who dies?
Here's a question. We feel like we're all a little more like evolved these days. We don't have public executions. They're not filmed or anything. They're in private. Are we just sticking our hands over our ears and going, no, and just not seeing them? There's stuff there. Like, should they be public? Like, hey, as a society, we're doing this, so we all have to see it happening.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I don't think that's a bad argument to make at all. That I forgot what episode of Mission Log years and years and years ago we talked about executions and how the history of that is that having a public execution, there are many reasons for it, but one of the things that it served to do is it sort of drove home to the audience that was there. It's like, this is one of you. This is a person from your community who did a terrible thing. Now look what's happened to them. And it's sort of an equalizer in that respect. Now we have so sanitized the idea of execution that it creates this distance between us as people and the very real people who are also being executed. It allows us to look at them as something other than human. It allows us to look at them as monsters who, as long as we keep killing the monsters, then we're doing something okay by our society. And that is not necessarily the case either. It's this strange idea that if you just keep killing enough, if you just keep throwing either bullets or enough high voltage electricity or, choose your weapon. If you keep throwing enough of that at the problem, eventually you'll just get rid of all the evil in the world. Well, guess what? Here it is 2022. And after 100,000 years of, human evolution, we still haven't gotten rid of all the evil in the world, even though we keep killing each other as fast as we possibly can with new and impressive mechanized ways to do that. So I get the idea of how public execution served one kind of purpose. I also think it is ghoulish and disgusting, and we should not bring that back. But it's also kind of weird when you think that, yeah, we've sanitized it and put it behind closed doors. So most of us don't know what it looks like when somebody dies.
Because that's the dad's 19th century logic, and in 19th century terms, it's solid. Like, kids need to see how our society runs. They need to experience what we do,
Mm-hmm.
now, which in
Yeah.
19th century logic, I guess that makes sense. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And well prior to the 19th century. I mean, public executions, there was a part of it that was for show. There was a part of it that was the state exercising its power and rubbing that in people's faces. But that other part of it, intended or not, where the audience sees it as like, well, there, but for the grace of God go I. Um, it creates a connection to that person. Like, you're there in an audience with other people from that same community, now watching somebody have their life snuffed out from them.
let's move that spotlight a little bit over to our other main character. We haven't talked about what Sykes deserves or does not deserve quite yet. um, I made a few times in my notes. I was like, this kind of is a Quark from Deep Space Nine. So
Sure, yeah, you get profit from other people's misfortune. Um, he gives the money away at the end, so does he profit from peace as well as profit from death? I like to think that he is somebody who now has to completely reassess his life, and I guess it just depends on how you see this particular character. Does he walk away and then a few days later decide that he's going to pull the same scam again in another town, or is he a guy who just saw a miracle happen and he doesn't quite understand and think, oh, I need to reassess all of my life's decisions?
I'm gonna again with that kind of Quark comparison. I'm gonna assume he's gonna end up on the Quark page. Is I'm going to continue scamming people, but maybe not with such emotional depth charges.
Mm, mm,
Like, you learn, like, at least I don't like destroy people's lives, but otherwise, and maybe if I annoy them a little, that's fine. But he was
yeah,
doing severe emotional. Well, he thought he was doing severe emotional manipulation for profit with
yeah,
Gallegos, but in fact, he was inadvertently, instigating a miracle, right?
yeah, yeah,
So he did everything wrong for the right outcome, which
yeah,
make
yeah,
all the
right,
wrong moves. I
right.
actually I had this idea last week. Have a show sort of like The Incredible Hulk, or Touched by an Angel, Highway to Heaven, even Quantum Leap. With the kind of anthology where
Mm,
the
mm-hmm.
drifter goes into a different town and
Yeah.
helps someone. I want to see a show where the drifter shows up in a different town every week and totally screws up someone's life, half inadvertently, half on purpose.
Right. Could be a good show.
That
Yeah.
could be Voyager, actually.
Yeah, yeah, actually it could. Yeah.
Go to another
Yeah.
planet every week and screw it up. One thought, but yeah, I did like Sykes. It's again, he's the character that you think about when this turns off because he's the liveliest one. He's the most interesting to watch.
Yeah.
The actor is the one that got the Academy Award nomination, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's so he's extremely likable and extremely horrible. So at the end of the episode, it's like how much of that horrible has now been erased or not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully by giving back the money, that's some indication that he has turned over a new leaf. But again, how long does that stick? I don't know. None
Yeah.
of us will know. Yeah.
Well, let us stick this onto the tripometer, 0 being not trippy at all, 5 being very trippy.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to throw this one?
I'm gonna give this a 4.5 on the tripometer. I think it has less to do with like weird mind bending, weird like change your perception of the universe. I don't think that's what this episode is about, but I have to give this episode very high marks for just doing what I always appreciated about Star Trek when it chooses to do so, which is that moment that it reaches through the TV, grabs the audience by the lapels and says, this is the contemporary story that we're telling. Yes, this is fantasy. Yes, this is set, 80 years ago. But, but hear me out. Let's talk about why capital punishment is messy and ghoulish and disgusting, and you should be horrified by it. And all you have to do is take a step back for a second, like the people in this town, and see that person at their end as a human being, and really ask yourself if you're okay with that person dying in front of your eyes. So I think the quote unquote miracle aspect at the end of it is less impressive, less important, less mind bending than a lot of other Twilight Zone mind bending. But the drama of this plays out just right for me. And if that little minor miracle gets us to that point, yeah, 4.5.
Okay, I'm gonna go lower than you on the tripometer. On the
Mhm.
tripometer, it's a 2.5 for me. Westerns
Yeah.
westerns, unless it's El Topo, westerns like are automatically not that trippy for me.
Sure. Yeah.
So that takes away, and the imagery. I mean, the trippiest thing we get is like dust flying through the air, so not very
Sure.
trippy. Now, if I had called it the philosophy meter,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
which
Okay. Well,
maybe I could have, should have, I don't know, but that is the
yeah.
way you could approach the show.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
agree with your score. I would
Okay,
definitely
well, here's the thing. So we'll invent it, the philosophy meter, the philosophometer, philosophoscope,
Philosophizer.
philosophizer. I guess a 5.5 out of 5 on the philosophizer. But yeah, tripometer, I could even, yeah, I would, with that logic, I would even adjust that down. Maybe it gets like maybe a little higher than you. Maybe it's like a 3.5 because we don't get an answer. We don't get, is it the hand of God? Is it the will of the people? Is it quantum entanglement? Is it the one possible outcome that is a 1 in a billion? Who knows? But whatever it is that did happen, it changed the reality of all of those people at the same time, which is a pretty miraculous thing to do.
Well, I guess I'm realizing more and more for my 3 questions. Question 1 and 2 are for deep discussions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Question 3 is for me because I'm just interested in what people think is trippy or not.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So I mean, I'm not like, oh no, that score's wrong. I'm like, oh, you see this a very different way than I do. And hey, I've been convinced once or twice to like, I actually agree that the monsters are doing Maple Street is a 0 on the tripometer now.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
If anyone wants to go back, there's a good explanation from Jessica Lynn Verity why it's not trippy, and actually she sold me on it. So
cool. All right. Yeah.
But I think we decided in that episode they are tripping, but it's not trippy.
right. But I like that because I get where you're coming from. The trippy. There are episodes of Twilight Zone that are very trippy, where you just feel like your mind has been blown, and now you have to sit back and like really pick up the pieces and put that back together. This isn't that episode, but it is a powerful episode.
I have a weird relationship with westerns too. Again, when we go to the Western Twilight Zone, it's fine. It's never a problem for me, really. But I sometimes have trouble getting through westerns. Haven't watched Yellowstone yet.
Yeah.
Everyone says watch Yellowstone. But like Unforgiven, great movie. Never in the mood for it. That sort of thing. Leone movies, love the music.
Yeah,
they're masterpieces.
Do you like Tombstone?
Okay, I can watch Tombstone. That
that's a great
pops.
movie.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but I can watch that. But when I was a kid, probably for about 8 years old, about 12 years old, I would record like 3 a.m. movies. Like hour-long westerns from the 30s. I had a weird obsession with those. Maybe because it was like forbidden fruit. Like nobody knew about them. Like even my dad was a little like, I don't know quite what this is.
Yeah.
So I definitely have an affinity for that. Or if you want to go back a few months ago, I was actually like watching Tom Mix on YouTube.
Oh, awesome! Cool.
Because I didn't realize how much of it was there. So So and I always have to say El Topo when I'm talking about westerns not being trippy, because that one is.
but see, I'm not unlike you in that respect. Like, just saying, here, watch this Western. Like I'm really not into those, but if there are Westerns that have this other sense of mind bendingness, or particularly when a show like The Twilight Zone will introduce some sort of weird science fiction element to a Western setting, then like, yeah, then I'm all in on that. But just, it's a Western. There are people who are going to shoot each other over, the property line of where they keep their cattle. Like, I'm not that interested in that. But along comes a movie like Tombstone, or Unforgiven, which has its own kind of weird mystical sense to it.
Oh yeah, great movie.
So
I guess I have trouble slowing down to Eastwood's pace sometimes.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
I think we all do. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of things where like, there's nothing bad here. It's just like, I definitely respect what's happening here, but I'm not really on board.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no taste anyway. I think my favorite Clint Eastwood movie that he directed is probably like Space Cowboys, which isn't even good. I just like seeing them in space. That's all.
Yeah, of course. I'm a
sci-fi guy.
Well, hey, if you're looking for a Western, though, I would also still put a vote in for the TV series Hell on Wheels, starring Captain Pike, Anson Mount. That is just a great, great series about finishing off the Transcontinental Railroad post Civil War. So you've got that tension there, and then you got Colm Meaney as just a fantastic bad guy. So that one, there's a Western that I think you could get down with.
Yeah, that is on my radar, but I have yet to get to that. Because maybe a TV show could be difficult. I had to do a podcast to make sure I got through all the Twilight Zones.
Right, yeah.
Because otherwise I'd watch a bunch of them and skip some, right? And I probably would have skipped Dust, because I'm like, I don't like dust. Dust makes me sneeze. But it is a really good episode. So that's the point of going through one at a time. I know we got to some major points there, but I do want to give you the floor in case we missed something.
No, I don't think we did, man. Like, I didn't intend to come on your show and rant about the injustices of the death penalty, but I'm just so I so like it when a show that is ahead of its time, like The Twilight Zone, can be even more so ahead of its time and address something that is, in the tradition of Gene Roddenberry. You change the setting and suddenly you can talk about things that are really important. Because if Rod Serling had just written a contemporary 1961 drama about somebody getting the death penalty, I think either would have been very much by rote by the time, the network had finished doing their thing with it. It would have been very watered down, or we would have ended up with a less contemplative ending. And I think this is the right call. This is the right choice to take something, set it in at the time, very popular genre, the Western, because you get to draw people in with that. And then while you have that audience, while you have their eyes glued to the TV, you start to get that audience to think. And I wish that more shows could and would do that in something as simple and elegant as this, a 30-minute time slot to tell a complete story and give us some actual food for thought. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, hey man, I love getting impassioned rants here. That's part of the point, right? But I had another point in my head, but it went out. So
well. Sorry about that.
No problem. So I guess I'll say to you, Happy Halloween.
Yeah, thank you. That's coming up. Indeed.
That's today.
Oh, right on. Hey, happy Halloween then. It is today. Awesome.
So I guess I'll just throw that. We are, of course, recording this several weeks before, but do you got a costume?
I have ideas for a costume. I'm going to a Halloween party that is booze themed. And the idea is you have to come in a costume of your own creation. So I can't just like go order one from Amazon that is like your favorite booze or cocktail. I thought the easiest thing to do is I get a bunch of like Wolfman hair glue it to my belly, and then I can be a fuzzy navel.
Ah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
well, actually, when my mom was once had us go to a party. I think it was actually like a summer like house or something. Anyway, she was like, take this blue sheet and put it on. I'm like, why? Because I'm an only child, so it's like we're 3 sheets to the wind.
Very good.
So
All
that was
right.
when faced with that, she went with that choice. No, I
That's
was thinking
good.
it. I was instantly thinking of speakeasies or whatever, and I'd go in a zoot suit, but
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah,
actually
that's
a
good.
drink, is it?
Yeah, no, no.
No, you got to go as a cocktail. Okay.
Yeah. Now, if a difficult one to do would be the French 75. Like the French part is easy, the 75 part is difficult because the cocktail is, gin, champagne, a little simple syrup, and a little lemon, but it's named after a 75 millimeter French artillery shell because, like I say, you drink enough French 75, you feel like you got hit by one.
Oh, too
So.
bad. I was
Mhm.
told you have a nice Halloween bullet hit.
Yeah, there we go. Just a big hole in my chest. Yeah.
I was thinking of the year 75 at first, not the caliber. So I was saying,
Right,
well,
right.
you could carry
Yeah.
like a Jello mold with like carrots in it or something.
Typifies 1975.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
um, but anyway, I guess I was trying to say that as a prelude to what's up in the mission log zone about that time, if you can think that far ahead.
That is a really good question because we will be midway through season 2, like almost past the midway point of season 2. Threshold is awfully close. It is
You're at the
very
threshold.
close. Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about that because who knows where we're gonna. Oh, and Tuvix is very close to that as well. We got a lot of heavy hitters coming up soon, so watch out for that on Mission Log. And we will be wrapping up uh, Lower Decks on Mission Log Live, so we'll probably do a little bit of a follow-up recap, some interviews, and we'll take time off for Mission Log Live until there's another new series on the air. So yeah. So a little
There
bit
is
of a
another
break
new
there.
series on the air. You're just not doing it on live. Isn't
Oh,
Prodigy coming
Prodigy.
back?
Well, yeah, Prodigy. Yeah, so Norman and Ashley will start Prodigy. That comes out October 27th. So their first episode will drop like November 2nd, I think. So they'll start that. I have obviously a much smaller hand in that, but keep following us at podcast.roddenberry.com. New stuff will show up there.
As for this one, it is Time Enough Pod on Twitter and Facebook. If you want to throw a dime to keep the lights on, I have at least one lamp here I always have on because I know I don't do a video, but it doesn't look right when I turn it off.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, yeah. At least one lamp. Keep that on. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll keep that lamp on with we're on Patreon as Podcastius, where you can also hear about sci-fi films at Matt and Luke's Sci-Fi Sanctuary. That I should mention Oral Hygiene, where we're continuing our bizarre occult Disney series, just looking at not like the Illuminati trying to reprogram your brain, which is like what's actually in these movies that like maybe went unnoticed or noticed at the time we forgotten about, that sort of thing.
Yeah, nice.
And you can hear some video game podcasts that I don't really show up on. Luke Loves Pokemon about Pokemon, Monster Mash about Monster Hunter, and the Game Show, which is for British guys yelling at each other, which I guess is a lot of UK podcasts. And
it's great.
Actually, it's funny. Luke made a trip home and did some one-on-ones with his co-hosts, and I listened to one. It's like, you're softballing. You have to be on Zoom so you can all yell insults at each other without being in the same room. Yeah,
very cool.
Just didn't sound right. Anyway, we've dodged that rope today. Can you dodge a rope?
Yeah. Well, you escaped the hangman's noose. Didn't dodge it so much, but yeah, it's fair. We'll say
we've
dodge.
Escaped the hangman's noose today for a big, bright, beautiful tomorrow. Okay. I just cut it there. It's fine.
Cool. All right. Cool, man.
Okay.
Well, then I will stop recording on this end. And let me know. It'll take a minute to process over here, but let me know if you need me to upload that to you. I'm happy to do so.
I'm basically gonna walk out the door after this anyway, so there's no rush.
Cool.
The question now is, do I go to the diner where they have the fried oysters or to the Indian restaurant?
Oh man, how are the fried oysters? Is it a like little home style diner kind of place?
Kind of. I would think of the Huddle House, but the food's good and
Oh
it's Japanese.
man. Oh god, that sounds like magic to me. For a long time there, I was watching several back-to-back ASMR videos of just like cooking in Japanese home style places, and it just brought me great joy. So
yeah, this one is good. It's got the counter and stuff, and then the Indian place is nice because they don't even order there anymore because I'm usually in a little bit of a rush, and they're just like,
yeah,
we know what you want, so
just throw food at you. What's your
yeah.
go-to? What do you get there?
Chicken butter masala with the maximum spiciness.
Hell yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
In the
All right.
summer they do their South Indian, but it's not summer anymore, so
Ooh, okay.
probably flip a coin on it. Okay. Thanks
All
for
right,
joining
man.
as always, and for jumping out of the After Dark a touch early.
Yeah,
So.
happy to. All right, have a good day, man. Be good.
Later. Bye-bye.
Bye.